2 years passed before the aliens returned to Earth. This time they came not as conquerors, but as observers. The Galactic Council had sent their most analytical species to study humanity. They needed to understand why humans behaved so differently from every other intelligent life form in the galaxy. Chief Analyst Zorlin of the Observer race stood on the bridge of their invisible research ship. The observers were tall, thin beings with large eyes and pale blue skin. They had evolved to watch and analyze other species. Their ships could hide in plain sight, and their technology could record every human action without being detected. "Begin deep observation protocol," Zorlin ordered his team. "We need to understand these humans completely." The observer ship settled into Earth's orbit, completely hidden from human sensors. For the next 18 months, they would watch humanity with the intensity of scientists studying bacteria under a microscope. Down on Earth, humans went about their daily lives with no idea they were being studied. The aliens had attacked twice and been driven away both times. Most people assumed the threat was over. They were wrong. In Detroit, construction worker Pete Johnson continued building houses and office buildings. Pete had worked construction for 20 years. He had been building when the first aliens arrived, and he kept building when they attacked. To Pete, aliens were just another problem to work around, like bad weather or supply shortages. The observers watched Pete work through rain, snow, and blazing heat. They recorded how he never missed a day of work, even when alien ships had been shooting at his city. When the Vorthak mental attacks hit, Pete had simply put on a hard hat and kept laying bricks. "Subject demonstrates unusual persistence," observer Techdoll noted in his report. "Physical discomfort does not alter behavior patterns." In Los Angeles, teacher Carol White ran an elementary school. Carol had been teaching for 15 years, and she loved working with children. When the aliens flooded the city, Carol moved her classroom to a boat. When they knocked out the power grid, she taught by candlelight. When parents were too scared to send their children to school, Carol went to their homes and taught them there. The observers recorded every lesson Carol taught. They watched her comfort frightened children and explain difficult topics in simple words. They saw her work 18-hour days to make sure no child fell behind in their education. "Subject prioritizes group welfare over personal safety," observer Kyle Knott wrote. "Continues primary function regardless of external threats." The observers were particularly interested in Dr. Helen Martinez. Helen was a psychologist who specialized in helping people recover from terrible experiences. When the aliens first attacked, Helen's husband and daughter had been killed in the fighting. Most beings would have been destroyed by such loss. The observers expected Helen to become angry and seek revenge, or to fall into despair and stop functioning. Instead, Helen did something that made no sense to alien minds. She opened a counseling center to help other people who had lost family members. "I know what it feels like," Helen told her patients. "I know the pain you're going through. But I also know that pain doesn't have to destroy you. You can use it to help others." The observers watched Helen work with hundreds of survivors. They recorded how she turned her own suffering into a tool for healing others. Her center became the largest trauma treatment facility on Earth. "Subject transforms negative experiences into positive actions," observer Zorlin wrote. "This behavior pattern appears frequently among humans. In rural Montana, farmer Bill Thompson continued growing food. Bill's farm had been damaged in the first alien attack, flooded in the second attack, and hit by power outages during the third attack. Each time, Bill simply fixed the damage and planted new crops. The observers could not understand Bill's persistence. His farm was small and not very profitable. He could have sold his land and moved to the city where it was safer. Instead, Bill bought more land and planted more food. "Someone has to feed people," Bill explained to his neighbor. "Aliens or no aliens, people need to eat." The observers recorded Bill's daily routine. He woke up at 5 in the morning every day. He worked until sunset every day. He never took vacations or days off. When his equipment broke, he fixed it. When his crops failed, he planted again. Subject: demonstrates obsessive dedication to resource production, the observers noted. Rational cost-benefit analysis would suggest abandoning current location. But the most puzzling human was Captain Jake Morrison. After his first encounter with the Zephyrians, Jake had been promoted to head of Earth's Deep Space Patrol. His job was to watch for alien ships and warn Earth if they returned. Jake spent months in space, alone except for his small crew. Observers expected him to show signs of stress or fear. Instead, Jake seemed to enjoy the work. He explored new areas of space, mapped asteroid fields, and studied distant stars. "This is beautiful," Jake said to his crew as they watched a nebula form new stars. "Look at all those worlds out there. Maybe some of them have people like us." The observers were confused. Jake had fought aliens twice. He knew humanity was surrounded by hostile forces. Yet he talked about exploring the galaxy and meeting new species peacefully. Subject displays contradictory behavior patterns, observer Fexmal wrote. Shows aggression when threatened but curiosity when safe. As the months passed, the observers documented thousands of similar cases. Humans who had been bombed rebuilt their cities bigger than before. Humans who had been attacked developed better weapons and defenses. Humans who had lost everything started over from nothing. Most importantly, humans who had every reason to give up kept working toward the future. The observers found this behavior in every human culture. In Tokyo, engineer Sam Davis designed better. Computers after the Nexus attack destroyed the old ones. In London, scientist Amy Walsh developed new communication systems that could not be jammed by alien technology. In Sydney, Dr. Maria Santos created medical techniques for treating injuries that no human had ever seen before. Each setback became a lesson. Each attack became an opportunity to improve. Each loss became motivation to build something better. "We are observing a species that learns from failure," Chief Analyst Zorlin reported to the Galactic Council. "Every negative experience strengthens their resolve instead of breaking it." The council members were skeptical. No known species behaved this way. When the Krellians faced extinction, they accepted their fate with dignity. When the hive minds encountered superior forces, they negotiated terms of surrender. When the Silicon Collective was outmatched, they retreated to preserve their existence. These were rational responses. This was how intelligent beings were supposed to behave. "Send us more data," the council demanded. "This behavior cannot be universal among humans." So the observers expanded their study. They watched humans in every situation they could find. They recorded responses to natural disasters, economic problems, personal tragedies, and social conflicts. The results were always the same. Humans fell down, then got back up. They failed, then tried again. They lost, then worked harder to win next time. The observers documented a construction crew in Chicago that rebuilt the same building 4 times after alien attacks kept destroying it. They recorded a research team in Brazil that continued studying rainforest animals even though their lab had been flooded 3 times. They watched a family in Kansas plant a new garden every year, even though storms kept destroying their crops. "Is as if failure does not compute in human psychology," observer Tekdal reported. "They process setbacks as temporary inconveniences rather than permanent defeats." The most disturbing discovery came when the observers studied human history. They found that this behavior was not new. Humans had been falling down and getting back up for their entire existence as a species. They had survived ice ages that should have killed them. They had rebuilt cities after earthquakes, volcanoes, and floods. They had continued exploring even when most expeditions ended in death. They had kept inventing even when most inventions failed. "This species has never learned to accept defeat," Chief Analyst Zorlin concluded in his final report. "They appear to be psychologically incapable of permanent surrender." The Galactic Council received the observer report with growing alarm. If humans could not be defeated through normal means, what did that mean for galactic stability? How could the galaxy function with a species that refused to follow the basic rules of civilization? The Council faced an unprecedented decision. They could try to destroy humanity before it spread to other worlds. Or they could try to understand what made humans so different from every other species in the galaxy. The answer would come from an unexpected source. In the ruins of an ancient library on a dead world, an archaeologist would discover the truth about why humans never stayed down when they fell. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth was not like other worlds, and humans were not like other species. They had evolved not in spite of catastrophe, but because of it. The revelation would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about survival, evolution, and the nature of intelligent life itself. 3 days into their stay on JÖRMUNGANDR, Harper and her team had settled into a routine. Each morning, they met with Elder Zixta and other Pixari representatives to learn about station life. Each afternoon, they explored different sections, meeting new species and building relationships. Each evening, they returned to the Dakota to compare notes and plan the next day's activities. Harper was beginning to feel optimistic about their mission when the alarm started. She was in the market section talking with a group of ethereal traders about Earth's atmosphere composition when red lights began flashing throughout the station. A voice boomed from hidden speakers, speaking in the common galactic language that Amy had been teaching the team. All station residents report to designated safe zones immediately. This is not a drill. Military vessels are approaching. Repeat, this is not a drill. The market erupted into chaos. Aliens of every description began running in different directions, some toward the exits, others toward what looked like reinforced shelters built into the station's structure. The ethereal traders. Harper had been speaking with simply vanished, their gaseous forms dispersing through ventilation grates. Amy appeared at Harper's side, her face pale. "Commander, I'm picking up massive energy signatures on the long-range sensors. Multiple ships, military configuration." Rodriguez was already moving toward them, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon he was not carrying. "Orders, Commander?" Harper looked around at the panic spreading through the market. Whatever was coming, it was scaring beings who had lived in space for generations. That was not a good sign. "We get back to the Dakota," she decided. "Now." They pushed through the crowd toward the docking bays. The corridors that had seemed spacious before were now packed with frightened aliens. Harper saw species she had never encountered before, all fleeing toward different sections of the station. When they reached their docking bay, they found Elder Zixta waiting for them with several other Pixari. The old alien's usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by obvious fear. "You must leave," Elder Zixta said without preamble. "Now, before they arrive." "Who's coming?" Harper demanded. "The hegemony of worlds," Elder Zixta replied. "Their battle fleet was spotted 3 hours ago. They will be here within the hour." Morrison had reached the Dakota's sensors and was reading the displays. 15 ships, Commander. Heavy cruisers and battleships. Way more firepower than anything this station has." Harper felt her heart sink. She had read about the hegemony in their intelligence briefings. They were a military alliance of aggressive species that believed in conquest and subjugation. Their ships were among the most advanced in the galaxy. "Why are they coming here?" she asked Elder Zixta. "JÖRMUNGANDR has always been neutral territory," the Pixari leader explained. "For 200 years, no military force has been allowed near the station. But lately, there have been rumors. Some say the hegemony wants to control all the major trade routes. Others believe they are preparing for a larger war." Kevin had powered up the Dakota's engines. "We can be ready to leave in 10 minutes, Commander." Harper stared at the tactical display showing the approaching hegemony fleet. 15 warships against one small exploration vessel was not a fight they could win. The smart thing to do was exactly what Elder Zixta suggested: run. But looking at the fear in the Pixari leader's eyes, Harper found herself thinking about the thousands of beings living on this station. Workers, traders, families, children. They had no ships to escape in. They had nowhere to run. "How many people live on JÖRMUNGANDR?" she asked. "Nearly 3 million, Elder Zixta replied. "From 47 different worlds. 3 million innocent beings who would be at the mercy of the hegemony military." Harper thought about the Pixari granddaughter Kevin had helped, about Nexus and the other aliens who had welcomed them despite having no reason to trust humans. "Commander," Rodriguez said quietly, "we need to make a decision." Before Harper could respond, her communications officer looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Commander, I'm receiving a transmission from the lead hegemony ship. They're demanding to speak with all ship captains currently docked at the station. Put it through," Harper ordered. The main display filled with the image of a Valorian in elaborate military armor. Its scarred face was set in an expression of cold authority. When it spoke, its voice carried the absolute certainty of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am Supreme Admiral Corvus of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. This station is now under military occupation. All ships currently docked will submit to inspection and registration. Any vessel attempting to leave without authorization will be destroyed. This order is effective immediately." The transmission ended, leaving Harper's bridge in silence. "Well," Morrison said after a moment, "I guess we're not leaving after all." Elder Zixta looked confused. "But surely you will try to escape. Your ship is small and fast. You might be able to outrun their patrol ships." Harper shook her head. "We're not leaving." "Commander," Rodriguez said carefully, "our orders were to make contact and return with information. We've done that. Earth needs to know about this situation." Harper understood his point. From a military perspective, preserving their intelligence and returning to warn Earth was the logical choice. But Harper was not thinking like a military officer right now. She was thinking like a human being who had just made friends with 3 million aliens who were about to lose their freedom. "Amy, can you get me a secure channel to Elder Zixta's people and any other resistance groups on the station?" Amy's fingers flew over her controls. "Yes, Commander, I can piggyback on the station's internal communication network. The hegemony won't be able to detect it for at least a few hours." Elder Zixta stared at Harper in amazement. "You want to resist? But your ship is so small. What can 5 humans do against 15 warships?" "I don't know yet," Harper admitted. "But we're going to find out." Kevin looked up from his engineering station. "Commander, if we're staying, I should mention something. I've been studying this station's power systems over the past few days. The whole place runs on interconnected networks that are incredibly complex. I think I understand how they work." "Explain." "Everything is connected," Kevin said, pulling up a schematic on his display. "Power, life support, artificial gravity, communications, even the waste recycling systems. It's all part of one massive computer network. The aliens who built this place were amazing engineers, but they made everything dependent on everything else." Harper studied the schematic. "You're saying the station is vulnerable?" "I'm saying it's like a giant machine with thousands of moving parts. If you know which parts to push, you can make the whole machine dance to your tune." Rodriguez caught on first. "Sabotage." "Not sabotage," Kevin corrected. "Redirection. We don't want to hurt anyone or damage the station. We want to make life very, very difficult for occupying forces who don't understand how things really work here." Harper felt the first spark of hope since the alarms had started. "How long would you need to figure out the specifics?" "Give me 12 hours and access to the maintenance tunnels," Kevin replied. "The Pixari know this station better than anyone. With their help, I can map every critical system." Elder Zixta was following the conversation with growing excitement. "You would do this? Risk your lives to help beings you barely know?" "Elder," Harper said, 3 days ago, your granddaughter was hurt in the market. My engineer helped her without being asked, without expecting anything in return. Today, you're offering to help us understand your world, even though we have nothing to give you. Maybe that's just what people do for each other." The old Pixari was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, it began to smile. There are others who think as we do, Elder Zixta said. Beings from many species who are tired of living in fear. The hegemony believes we will submit because we always have. They do not understand that sometimes push people far enough and they push back. Then let's give them a surprise they'll never forget, Harper said. Over the next hour, as the hegemony fleet took positions around the station and began landing, troops, Harper's small team transformed from diplomats into the nucleus of a resistance movement. Elder Zixta brought representatives from 6 different species. Amy coordinated communication between groups that had never worked together before. Morrison began preparing medical supplies for what everyone knew would be dangerous work. Rodriguez studied the deployment patterns of hegemony forces and began planning ways to move through the station without being detected. Kevin disappeared into the maintenance tunnels with a team of Pixari engineers who knew every pipe and conduit in the massive structure. As night fell over JÖRMUNGANDR, though day and night were artificial concepts on a space station, Harper stood in the Dakota's observation deck, looking out at the hegemony ships that now surrounded their new home. Tomorrow, Supreme Admiral Corvus would begin implementing whatever plan had brought his fleet here, but tonight, in hidden corners throughout the station, beings from dozens of worlds were meeting in secret, planning, preparing, and learning to work together in ways they never had before. The hegemony was about to discover that conquering a station was easy. Holding it was another matter entirely. The space around JÖRMUNGANDR looked like a graveyard of dead rocks. Huge chunks of stone and metal drifted in the darkness, spinning slowly as they had for thousands of years. Some were as big as mountains, others were no larger than houses. All of them blocked the view of the massive station that lay hidden in their center. Commander Lisa Harper pressed her face against the small window of the CNS Dakota. She had seen pictures of alien space stations before, but nothing had prepared her for this. JÖRMUNGANDR was not just big. It was beyond anything humans had ever built. The station stretched for miles in every direction, its metal surface covered, with thousands of lights that blinked in patterns she could not understand. "Take us in slowly, Paul," Harper said to her pilot. Lieutenant Paul Stone nodded and adjusted their course. The Dakota was small compared to the other ships they could see moving between the rocks. Most of the alien vessels were at least twice their size. Some looked like they could swallow the Dakota whole without noticing. Dr. Jake Morrison floated over to join Harper at the window. He was the ship's doctor and also their expert on alien life. For months, he had studied every piece of information. They could gather about the galaxy's many species, but seeing them in person would be different. "Look at that ship over there." Morrison pointed to a vessel that seemed to be made of crystal. It caught the light from distant stars and threw it back in rainbow colors. "That has to be Zephyrian. Their whole culture is based on working with crystal technology." Harper nodded but kept her eyes on the station. Somewhere inside that massive structure were representatives from dozens of alien worlds. Today, humanity would meet them for the first time. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. "Incoming transmission," called out Amy Carter from the communications station. She was young for such an important mission, but she had learned more alien languages in 2 years than most people learned in a lifetime. "It's coming from the station." "Put it through," Harper ordered. A voice filled the bridge. It spoke in perfect English, though there was something cold about the way it pronounced each word. "Human vessel CNS Dakota. You are cleared for approach. To Docking Bay 847. Follow the guidance signals. Any deviation from the assigned path will result in immediate escort by security vessels." "Docking Bay 847, Stone repeated, checking his instruments. "That's in the outer ring. Looks like they're not rolling out the red carpet for us." Amy looked up from her station. "I've been monitoring their communications. The outer ring is where they put independent traders and scavenger ships. It's not exactly the diplomatic quarter." Harper was not surprised. Humanity was new to this galactic community. They had no trade agreements, no military alliances, and no reputation. To the aliens, they were probably just another primitive species trying to get rich off galactic technology. "It doesn't matter where they put us," Harper said. "We're here to make friends, not demands." The Dakota followed the guidance signals through the asteroid field. As they got closer to the station, Harper could see more details. The outer hull was covered with docking bays of different sizes. Some were clearly built for the crystal ships they had seen. Others had different shapes that must fit alien vessels she had never imagined. Their assigned bay was small and seemed to be designed for ships like theirs. As they approached, Harper could see other vessels already docked nearby. Most looked old and worn. Their hulls were scarred from years of travel through space. "Beginning docking procedure," Stone announced. The Dakota moved slowly into the bay. Mechanical arms reached out from the walls to grab their ship and pull it into position. Within minutes, they were locked in place. "Atmosphere is breathable," Morrison reported, checking his instruments. "Gravity is about 90% of Earth normal. Temperature is comfortable. They've set up the bay for human physiology." Harper was impressed despite herself. The station's computers had analyzed their ship during the approach and adjusted the docking bay to match their needs. That kind of automatic system was far beyond anything humans had built. "All right, people," Harper said, turning to address her crew. "This is what we came for. Remember your training. We represent all of humanity today. Let's make a good impression." The team that would make first contact was small. Harper would lead, of course. Morrison would handle any biological or medical questions. Amy would manage communications and translation. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez would provide security, though his weapons would stay on the ship. The last member was Chief Engineer Kevin Davis, who understood their technology better than anyone. They gathered at the airlock, each wearing their best dress uniforms. Harper had spent hours making sure every detail was perfect. First impressions mattered, especially when meeting an entire galaxy of alien civilizations. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay a corridor that stretched away into the distance. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The air smelled clean but carried strange scents that Morrison's instruments could not identify. They stepped into the station together. Almost immediately, Harper realized how small they were in this place. The corridor was built for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling was at least 15 feet high. The walls were far apart. Everything was designed on a scale that made humans feel like children. "Which way?" Rodriguez asked, looking down the empty corridor. Amy checked her tablet. "The Port Authority office is this way," she said, pointing to the right. "We need to register our arrival and request permission to meet with the station council." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Occasionally, they passed other beings, but most paid them no attention. Harper saw her first. Real alien when they rounded a corner and came face to face with something that looked like a walking tree. It was at least 9 feet tall and covered in what looked like bark. Where a face should be, there were several eye-like organs that blinked at them before the creature moved on. "Treefolk," Morrison whispered. "I read about them. They're from a high-gravity world where plants evolved intelligence instead of animals." The Port Authority office was a huge room filled with desks and computer terminals. Behind most of the desks sat aliens of types Harper had never seen before. Some had too many arms, others had no arms at all. A few seemed to be made of gas or liquid held together by force fields. They approached the nearest desk. Behind it sat a being that looked somewhat like a large insect. Its head was triangular and covered with faceted eyes. When it spoke, the words came from a small device attached to its throat. "Species identification?" it asked without looking up from its work. "Human," Harper replied. "From the planet Earth. We're here for our first diplomatic contact with the galactic community." The being's many eyes focused on them for the first time. Human, it repeated as if tasting the word. Not in the database. New species registration required. Fee is 500 galactic credits. Harper felt her heart sink. They had no galactic credits. Earth's money meant nothing here. We don't have credits yet. This is our first visit. Perhaps we could arrange some other form of payment? The insect being made a sound that might have been laughter. No credits, no registration, no registration, no legal status, no trading rights, no diplomatic meetings, no nothing. Come back when you have money. Amy stepped forward. Surely there must be some provision for new species making first contact. There is, the being said. Temporary visitor. Status. Duration, 72 hours. After that you leave or pay the fee. Harper felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was exactly the kind of situation their training had prepared them for. We accept temporary visitor status. The being pressed several buttons on its terminal. A small card emerged from a slot in the desk. Temporary identification. Do not lose it. Losing it means immediate expulsion from the station. Harper took the card. It was warm to the touch and seemed to be made of the same glowing metal as the station walls. Thank you. Can you tell us how to contact the station council? Council does not meet with temporary visitors, the being said, already returning to its work. Goodbye. They left the office feeling frustrated but not defeated. 72 hours was not much time, but it was enough to start building relationships. Harper had not expected this to be easy. As they walked back through the corridors, Morrison pointed to a large sign written in dozens of different languages. Amy studied it for a moment, then smiled. It's advertising the main market area, she said. That might be a good place to start meeting people. Harper nodded. The formal diplomatic route had failed, but humans had always been good at making friends in unexpected places. They would find another way. The adventure was just beginning. The unity field lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. Across the galaxy, beings who had been enemies moments before looked at each other with new understanding. On Zephyr Prime, Admiral Valdorn felt the crushing weight of millions of years of suffering that his people had caused. He also felt something else, the forgiveness and hope that radiated from human minds. Even after everything the Zephyrians had done, humans were willing to offer mercy rather than revenge. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova as his fleet entered the Zephyr Prime system. He expected to fight the final battle of the war. Instead, he received a message that surprised him. Human fleet, this is Admiral Valdorn of the Zephyrian Empire. I request permission to speak with your leader. Jake looked at his crew. Amy Chen shrugged. Tony Williams smiled. Sage nodded his approval. This is Captain Morrison. You can speak to me. Valdorn appeared on the screen. The proud alien commander looked broken and tired. Behind him, Jake could see Zephyrian officers removing their weapons and laying them on the ground. Captain Morrison, I have committed terrible crimes against your species and many others. I do not deserve mercy, but I am asking for it anyway. What are you saying? Asked Jake. I am surrendering the Zephyrian Empire to you. All our fleets, all our worlds, all our weapons. Do with us what you will. Jake felt stunned. This was not how he had expected the war to end. Admiral, we don't want to rule your empire. We just want our freedom and the freedom of everyone you've enslaved. Then what happens to us? Asked Valdorn. My people have done nothing but make war for thousands of years. We don't know how to live in peace. On Earth, President Lisa Carter received Jake's message about Valdorn's surrender. She called an emergency meeting with her advisors, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Dr. Alex Turner, General Ryan Brooks, and Ben Parker all gathered in the White House Situation Room. The war is over, said Carter, but now we have to decide what to do. With the galaxy, "The Zephyrians have enslaved dozens of species," said General Brooks. "Some of those species want revenge, and they have a right to be angry," said Dr. Rodriguez. "But revenge won't heal the damage that's been done." Ben Parker had been listening to communications from across the galaxy. "The freed slaves are looking to us for leadership. They want to know what kind of galaxy we're going to build." Dr. Turner spoke up. "This is bigger than just Earth now. We have a responsibility to everyone." President Carter thought about the Unity Field experience. For just a moment, she had felt the thoughts and emotions of billions of beings. She had felt their pain, but also their hope. "We're going to build something new," she decided. "Not an empire, but a confederation. Every species gets a voice. Every world gets to choose its own path." 2 weeks later, representatives from 300 worlds gathered on Earth for the first Galactic Congress. The meeting took place in a specially built facility in Geneva that could accommodate beings of many different shapes and sizes. President Carter opened the Congress with a speech that was translated into thousands of languages. "6 months ago, aliens came to our world and demanded our surrender. They thought we would give up because we were afraid. Instead, we discovered something amazing. That consciousness itself is stronger than any weapon." The audience listened in silence. Humans sat next to former slaves, former Zephyrian officers sat next to their former victims, and beings who had never met before worked together to translate ideas between species. "Today, we have a choice," Carter continued. "We can build a galaxy based on fear and domination, or we can build one based on cooperation and freedom. The Zephyrian Empire chose fear. Let us choose hope." Admiral Valdorn stood up. Many beings in the audience hissed or made angry sounds when they saw him. He was the symbol of everything they had suffered under. "I know that many of you hate me," Valdorn said. "You have good reason. My people conquered your worlds, enslaved your families, and destroyed your cultures. I cannot undo those crimes." He paused and looked directly at President Carter. "But the humans have shown us that there is another way. When they could have destroyed us, they chose mercy. When they could have enslaved us as we enslaved others, they offered us partnership instead." Valdorn reached into his uniform and pulled out something that made the entire audience gasp. It was the crown of command, the symbol of Zephyrian authority, that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. "I formally dissolved the Zephyrian Empire," he said, and placed the crown on the podium in front of President Carter. "In its place, I propose the Terran Confederation, with humans as the guarantors of freedom for all species." The audience erupted into discussion. Some beings cheered, others argued, and still others sat in shocked silence. Dr. Rodriguez stood up. "With respect, Admiral Valdorn, humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to help build something where no one rules over anyone else." "Then how will we maintain peace?" asked Sage. "How will we prevent new empires from rising?" Dr. Turner had been working on this problem for weeks. "We've learned that human consciousness can affect technology across vast distances. We can create a galaxy-wide network of consciousness-enhanced communication and defense systems." "What does that mean?" asked a representative from the Vega system. Ben Parker explained. "It means every world can stay in instant contact with every other world. If anyone tries to start a war or enslave people, everyone else will know immediately. And if someone needs help, the whole galaxy can respond." Amy Chen, who had become Earth's expert on consciousness navigation, added, "We can also share technology freely. No one needs to conquer others to get what they need." Over the following days, the Congress worked out the details of the new confederation. Every species would have representation based on population. Every world could choose its own government, and humans would serve as mediators when conflicts arose. But the most important decision was about defense. The galaxy needed protection, not just from internal threats, but from external ones. Dr. Rodriguez had been studying the ancient records that Sage brought from the Andromedan archives. According to these texts, the Primarchs left warnings about entities from outside our galaxy. beings that view consciousness itself as a threat to the universe. What kind of beings? Asked General Brooks. We don't know exactly. The records call them the void dwellers, creatures that exist in the empty spaces between galaxies and feed on the destruction of thinking minds. Captain Morrison, who had been quiet during most of the discussions, finally spoke up. Then we'd better be ready for them. The Congress established the Terran Confederation Fleet, with Jake Morrison as its first admiral. The fleet would be crewed by volunteers from all species, but humans would serve as the consciousness coordinators for the advanced technology. As the Congress ended, beings from across the galaxy returned to their homes with hope for the first time in millennia. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, but something better had taken its place. President Carter gave a final speech to the galaxy. 6 months ago, we were a small species that had just learned to travel between stars. Today we are part of a confederation that spans the galaxy. We didn't get here through conquest or domination. We got here by refusing to surrender our principles, even when faced with overwhelming force. She looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words were being heard on thousands of worlds. To any who would threaten the freedom we have built. Together, know this. We are no longer separate species competing for resources. We are one galaxy, united in the belief that all conscious beings have the right to live free. And we will defend that right with everything we have. 1 year later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Earth's Promise. His crew included humans, Andromedans, reformed Zephyrians, and beings from dozens of other worlds. They were on patrol at the edge of the galaxy, watching for signs of the void dwellers. Admiral, said his communications officer, a young Zephyrian named Kell, who had joined the fleet to atone for his people's crimes, we're receiving a signal from outside the galaxy. What kind of signal? Asked Jake. It's strange, sir. It doesn't seem to carry information. It seems to carry emptiness. Amy Chen, now Jake's second in command, checked her navigation instruments. Something big is moving toward us from the void between galaxies. Very big. Jake felt a chill, but also a strange excitement. Humanity had awakened from its long sleep, to find itself in a galaxy at war. They had ended that war and built something beautiful in its place. Now they faced a new challenge, one that would test not just their military strength, but their commitment to consciousness itself. Harper looked around at her allies from dozens of worlds, beings who had discovered that they were stronger together than apart. Then we keep making your life difficult until you change your mind. It took another 6 hours of negotiations conducted, while the Resistance maintained control of critical station systems. But eventually, Admiral Corvus agreed to the terms. The hegemony fleet departed, leaving behind only a warning that they would not be so lenient in the future. As the last hegemony ship disappeared into the distance, celebrations erupted throughout JÖRMUNGANDR. But for Harper, the real celebration was quieter and more meaningful. She stood in the main market area, watching children from different species play together while their parents conducted business in a